go to the beach, each, let's go get a wave. They say what they gonna say.
I really can't get over how much I hate Nicki Minaj. I just need you all to know that. This, what is this? What is she telling us about? Can we cut to the part where they say "Twinkle, twinkle, little star"?
There's no end in sight. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Now everybody let me hear you say right, right, right. Go spend all your money 'cause the day paid late. And if you a G, you a G, G, G. My name is a nigga, you can call me Nicky. Get on the floor.
Yeah, see, this isn't a verse. Like, this is her telling us how to pronounce her name, that it's payday, and then singing "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." I don't get it. Like, what? How is she on? Is she still on American Idol? I don't understand. All right, let's learn about news. All right, video 3, parts of the story. There are 3. It's appropriate. I didn't mean for that to rhyme. I guess it didn't really rhyme because I just said 3 twice. It rhymed like Nicki Minaj rhymes. Anyway, let's talk about the parts of the story. So the 3 parts are the lead, the summary paragraph, and everything else. All right, so let's talk about this lead business. If we go back to that original, business writing reading that I had you all do that was written by Ricky Telg, some of you wrote, in the discussion points that it was helpful for you that it put it in fishing terms, because it talked about, your introductory paragraph being like, like the bait, and then the next paragraph is being like the hook. It's very similar in news writing. The lead, not led, but lead is, it leads the story. It's the very first thing. It's the most important thing. And it's always the first paragraph of your story. And its job is to capture interest, right? Because if you're skimming the paper, if you're skimming online, and you read the headline and the headline seems important or relevant to you, you'll usually give it one paragraph. And that's make or break. Does it pique my interest? Do I want to read more? Or is this like, nah, this doesn't apply to me, and then you move on to the next thing? Like, that is the job of the lead. So it captures the reader's attention, gives the most important information. Doesn't necessarily have to be complete in this way, but it needs to kind of tell you like what the story is about, like what is most unique or interesting about it. And so as you're writing your lead, which is very difficult to do, by the way, this is just a word of warning to you. A lot of times when I had to write, press releases or news stories or whatnot, probably I'd say at least more than half of the time that I spent writing something would be me staring at that first paragraph, because it's not just the writing of it that's difficult. It's all the thinking that goes into it to figure out, what is most important about your story. And so I have over here, ask yourself, what is my story really about? What is the so what? What is the most important or interesting thing about this story? Or what makes it unique? Like, why will people want to read it? And so, if you're staring at a blank page for a long time, that's okay. Don't be disheartened by that. So another thing that'll happen sometimes is you'll write your lead and you'll be happy with it and it comes out really quickly, and then you'll write the rest of your story and then you'll go back and you'll read it and you'll find that they don't really sync up. The lead kind of is like a promise to the reader that the story is going to be about, whatever the thing is. And then if it doesn't match, then they feel misled. So you got to make sure that they match at the end. So some sort of like, more specifics. The lead should be only 2 to 3 sentences. Again, paragraphs in newspapers, and in press releases typically are between, I think, 36 and 48 words. They're very small. They're much smaller than you would if you were writing an academic paper. It should capture the reader's attention. It should tell the reader what the story is about. And you kind of know this intuitively. It's what you hear on the nightly news, right? It's like, a local man was shot and killed today while attempting to rob a liquor store. Like, that is a hard news sort of lead. And I have here hard news versus soft news. Those are 2 different types of leads. For this assignment in class, I kind of urge you to stick with the hard news leads, because that's sort of the easier one to do if you're just starting out. We'll talk more about the difference between hard and soft news in a moment. So here's some examples. I pulled these last semester. Governor Rick Scott, which is Florida's governor still, Governor Rick Scott and legislators are so opposed to tuition increases that they want to change the law to get even more control over future hikes. And so, if I'm interested, if I'm a student, I'm going to read that and think, whoa, how did that happen? And why are they going to get control? Maybe you don't have that reaction. That's the reaction I have. This one's better. That was from the St. Pete Times. This one's better. A woman accused of hitting her husband in the face with a spatula and throwing his chicken in a swimming pool was arrested in a foul-related flap in Vero Beach, according to recently released records. That's got my interest anyway. So those are examples of leads. We're going to come back in just a little bit with the next paragraph in each of those stories and show how it complements it. And that paragraph, if I can get my computer to go forward, is called the nut graph or summary paragraph. If you don't like nut graph. And it's the paragraph that directly follows the lead. And what it does is once the lead has you hooked, it gives you like the critical details that you need to understand what just happened in the first paragraph. Like it's kind of a summary paragraph is probably the more accurate term. Although the nut graph comes from the phrase, in a nutshell. And so basically what it does is it sort of sums up, in the most general way, the details that you need to understand, this story. And so again, if the lead is the hook, the nut graph is that snatch thing that fishermen do all dramatic like on OLN. You've seen this. It's the one like where they set the hook, and they like reach like they're catching fish. They should never be that excited. Anyway, so here's some examples from this is what matches up with the Rick Scott tuition hike one. This is the nut graph for that. It says currently state universities can ask the Board of Governors for up to 15% higher rates, known as tuition differential. Additionally, there is an automatic increase to keep up with inflation. House Speaker Will Weatherford and Senate President Don Geitz has proposed cutting that flexibility by more than half. Governor Rick Scott wants to eliminate it altogether, making it that much more tough to raise tuition. And so you see how this sort of complements that, the lead was sort of the hook, and then this kind of gives you, in a nutshell, what is happening. And then what will happen is everything else in this particular story will sort of support that, like it'll be, background information or further detail or whatnot. Here's the second part to the other one. The husband of Darlene Donnie, 40, told Indian River County Sheriff's officials December 10th that he was cooking chicken on the grill when Donnie approached him, inquiring about a woman's number on his phone. When he denied calling the number 32 times, she accused him of cheating and became violent. That's supposed to be violent, not violent, according to affidavits. And so that was kind of, in a nutshell, what happened in that scenario. Also, this is really, really poor writing. I just need you to know that. So when he denied calling the number 32 times, did he deny it 32 times, or did he deny calling it 32 times? And that's ambiguous. Anyway, so fascinating. And then, again, you got your lead, that's your hook, your nut graph or summary paragraph that gives us the basics of what we need to know about this story, and then everything else. And everything else is organized according to importance. And so a lot of times what you can do is, since your paragraphs are kind of small bite-sized chunks anyway, you can sort of write them in a way that makes sense to you. And then if you've written them well enough, you can almost just sort of move them around, to try and figure out what goes best where. And then, kind of go back to make it jive. So, don't fuss over it too much as you're writing it in this everything else section, because you can go back and change it. Other sort of tips is, if you got quotes from people that are interesting, you can place them higher in the story. By higher, I mean, closer to the top, because readers love quotes. It's sort of like having a guest writer in your paper. It's like all of a sudden you're not talking anymore and there's somebody else in the conversation. We're like, oh my God, what did this person have to say? And I don't know why that is, but that's just a weird thing that we do. So when you got good quotes, put them up high. Don't bury them, because they add a lot to your story. And then the last thing is, have a boilerplate for your organization to end on. And so a boilerplate is just some basic information about your organization. And so if you're writing about the FFA and you don't know how to end your story, a good way to end your story would just be, the National FFA organization, or whatever it's called now, is a nationwide extracurricular organization designed to teach youth about leadership in agriculture. It can be found in a place near you. Please contact blah, blah, blah for more information. It's just sort of the basics about your organization. This is one of the requirements for your assignment. So be thinking of a boilerplate for your fictitious organization. All right, let's go ahead in this one and we'll talk about hard news versus soft news in an epic fight to the finish. I'm so funny when I make these, but not when I deliver them. Anyway, so again, hard news is sort of the news that you hear on the nightly news, like local man shot and killed while trying to rob a liquor store. Soft news is, more human interest, more storytelling style. It's a little more flowery. It generally does not happen as fast. So I have some examples here. This is two examples of the same story that happened last semester when we were teaching this class. So this is the hard news version, right? This is just, Lassie telling them that Timmy is stuck down a well. A large explosion caused by a gas leak destroyed 2 buildings in East Harlem on Wednesday, killing at least 4 people and injuring at least 24 more. That's the basics of this story. 4 dead in Harlem building collapse. A soft story or a soft news story is a little bit different. And so here's an example. This is the same event, and this one is written in a different style. And it's more, this would typically come let's actually look and see. Oh, it doesn't give a date. Usually these, like your soft stories, come maybe 2 to 3 days after whatever the event is, and it tries to, sort of sum up what happened in the event and put a more human side to it. And so you read it, and it sounds a little bit different, right? Instead of being a large explosion caused a gas leak, it says the call to Consolidated Edison came at 9:13 a.m. on a Wednesday. The smell of gas detectable the night before had strengthened around 2 buildings by 116th Street and Park Avenue in East Harlem. Less than 20 minutes later, the buildings were gone, leveled by a tremendous explosion whose tremors could be felt more than a mile away. And so you can see that this isn't necessarily just trying to give information. This is more, sort of a dramatic account. And people like to read this, particularly after the fact when they've read all the, sort of up-to-date information, and then they want to read more about it. I should back up and say that again. When they've read like all the immediate things, when the event has died down, this sort of story is what's typically brought in to sort of recap that story, put it in a more human frame, and give sort of the details that add to a good story, but which maybe couldn't have been gotten in time to do the hard news story that needed to get out right away, if that makes any sense. We can talk about it more in class if it's confusing. Again, most of you are going to be writing this type of story. If one of you wants to write this type of story where it's a little more flowery, just come and talk to me, and that'll be a good thing. All right. We'll talk about the format in our next video.
Like it's your last chance.